Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, and Gonzaga basketball. This Halloween, we lay out 3 predictions so bold, they are bound to scare you away.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Halloween and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like all Zag players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. So stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward from Mazda. Move and be moved. Well, folks, it is Halloween. It is the final day of October, and most importantly, it is the final episode of the offseason for the Locked On Zags podcast. Next Monday, we will, of course, be previewing Gonzaga's first official game of the season against Texas Southern, which will be at 6 p.m. on November 3rd. But for today, a now routine. I believe this is the 4th year that we have done this. It's not always the show right before the start of the season, but it's usually right around the end of October where we do our bold predictions. It worked out perfectly to have it be on Halloween this year. So bold, they are spooky. Again, every year, 3 different bold predictions, one for each segment. And I try to make these particularly bold. I obviously want to give an explanation for why I think so-and-so might happen. But if I'm getting them correct, if every single time I'm getting 2 or even all 3 of them correct, I feel like I'm not making them bold enough. I want them to really stand out. We have had a few of these hit in the past. Made a prediction that Julian Strother would score 40 points in a game, and he did, in fact, do that against Portland. Felt pretty good about that one. Last year, I projected Gonzaga to be in the national championship game. Obviously, that did not happen, but I will take half credit because I projected they would face Florida, who at the time was projected to not even be a top 5 team in the SEC. Florida, of course, did go to the national championship and win said championship, so I'll give myself a half point for that one, but got 3 fun ones laid out for you all today as we are on nearly the eve of the official Gonzaga basketball season getting underway. We'll start number 1 here. First bold prediction of the 25-26 Gonzaga basketball season. Braden Huff, not Graham Ike. Braden Huff will lead the Gonzaga Bulldogs in scoring this season, and he will also have more assists per game than Graham Ike. And I'm not entirely sure how bold of a prediction this actually is, at least amongst people very plugged into the Gonzaga basketball program. Nationally, this will come across as a very bold prediction. Graham Ike is gobbling up all of the preseason accolades for this team. Every list out there of the top 25, top 50, top 100 players in college basketball features Graham Ike, typically between 15 and 25 on those lists. Graham Ike was recently named to a preseason watch list from the NABC. He was named to the Karl Malone Award for the best power forward in college basketball. He is a preseason All-American third-teamer at CBS Sports. And I don't disagree with any of that, nor do I believe that Graham Ike shouldn't be getting that kind of preseason attention. This man has averaged 17 points per game and each of the past 2 years at Gonzaga while playing 23 minutes a night. It is entirely deserved that his high volume of scoring efficiency puts him in this conversation. But the fact that he is being written in Sharpie by everybody as Gonzaga's obvious, no doubt, unquestionable leader in terms of scoring this upcoming season has me wondering if maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. Because Graham Ike is now going to be joined in the starting lineup by Braden Huff, who spent the past 2 seasons as his backup. And what we know is that when Graham Ike came off the floor and Braden Huff came onto the floor, the offense didn't miss a beat. Gonzaga did exactly what Gonzaga does. They continued to relentlessly feed the post, and Braden Huff scored at an extraordinarily high clip in terms of efficiency and in terms of volume. None of that really changed. They're not exactly the same player. Graham Ike is a better rebounder. He is a more physical player. And perhaps most notably in terms of this projection, Graham Ike is far better at drawing contact and getting to the free throw line. That is a huge difference between these two players' games at this point, but also something that I would not be surprised to see Braden Huff improve upon somewhat dramatically this upcoming season. The main reason I feel this projection could come true for Gonzaga is that having both these players in the starting lineup together allows Gonzaga to be matchup dependent in terms of the roles that they play. Let me put it to you this way. Let's use the St. Mary's game as an example last year. It was a WCC championship game. Gonzaga had already played St. Mary's twice and lost to them twice. In that game, they entered Braden Huff into the starting lineup in place of Ben Gregg, in part as an element of surprise against St. Mary's. What happened in that game is that Mitchell Saxon, the two-time WCC Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best shot blockers in all of college basketball, was defending Graham Ike as we expected him to do. It meant that Paulus Morauskas, who is not nearly as good of a down-low post defensive player, was guarding Braden Huff. So Gonzaga brought Ike away from the rim. He was able to play out at the perimeter, something he did effectively last year by shooting 40% from three. It was a low volume, but enough of a threat from downtown to force defenders to come out on him. That meant that Mitchell Saxon could not play defense around the rim, and that meant that Braden Huff was basically playing offense one-on-one against an inferior defensive player, and Huff scorched him. It wasn't like his greatest game, but they fed him the ball and he went to work, and they were really struggling to stop him because they did not have that insurance down low in Saxon because they brought him away from the rim. What is stopping Gonzaga from doing that every time they play a team that has a shot blocker who is going to be assigned to Graham Ike? And if they don't assign the shot blocker to Graham Ike, they will just flip that role. But my assumption is that most teams are going to default put their best defensive player on Graham Ike. Another way to look at this, look at what Braden Huff has done throughout his career, and now imagine that the vast majority of games this year, he will be defended by the opposing team's second best, also known as worst, post defender. Last year, for the majority of the season, and in Braden Huff's first year, that wasn't the case because he was subbing in and out with Ike. So the best defensive player on the floor was guarding Braden Huff for the most part. That won't be the case this year. And to me, that makes me feel very confident that Huff is going to get an obscene amount of paint touches while he's on the floor. Graham will too. And if Graham continues to shoot 3 times as many free throws as Braden Huff, it's going to be hard for Huff to catch him in terms of total points scored. But it's also not impossible to imagine that happens. I mean, looking at their numbers last year, if you were to extrapolate them out to on a per 100 basis. So Graham Ike, given 100 possessions, was scoring 42.9 points. Braden Huff, when given 100 possessions, was scoring 37.6 points. Not the same amount, but also not a dramatically lower clip either. Both of them were almost the exact same in terms of 2-point field goal percentage. Ike was 61.8, Huff was 61.3. Also, with regards to the passing numbers, we saw this a little bit in the exhibition game. Obviously, the caveat being that Gonzaga was playing a D2 team in Western Oregon, but Gonzaga kind of let Braden Huff operate in sort of a Drew Timme-esque role, not as pronounced as Drew Timme's role, but like they would give Huff the ball and operate off of that. We saw it in a beautiful possession where Huff got the ball down low. Western Oregon began to double team. As soon as that happened, Graham Ike cut to the rim. Huff found him, hit him with the pass, easy lay-in. Again, better teams will defend that better, but that is the kind of hub role that I think Braden Huff could really play on this team, and it would allow him to score a bunch of points. It would allow Ike to score a bunch of points, but I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year, Braden Huff is the guy who scored more points per game throughout the season than Graham Ike. I expect it to be close, but I wouldn't be shocked if this goes in a direction that would be very much opposite of what many, many people are assuming will happen in Spokane this upcoming season. Well, Gonzaga's depth is a huge area of strength for Coach Mark Few this year. Could it result in the coach doing something that he has literally never done before? We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. And there are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward, pretty obvious. It's the triumphant, heroic return of Tyon Grant-Foster after winning his court case on Monday at about 5 p.m. He rolled his way over to the McCarthy Athletic Center, walked into the arena with Mark Few to a raucous cheer from the crowd, got himself onto the floor. The performance does not matter. Tyon Grant-Foster is eligible. He is playing for Gonzaga this year. It was an emotional, beautiful, heartfelt moment. It helped lead to Gonzaga landing a commitment from 2027 recruit Dooney Johnson. And it was just one of those moments that reminds you how special and unique this Gonzaga program is. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected, well, it's only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're still going through our bold predictions for the upcoming 2025-26 college basketball season. We talked about Braden Huff potentially being Gonzaga's leading scorer this year and having more assists per game than Graham Ike as a potential offensive hub for this Gonzaga team. And now, second segment, have another prediction for you here. For the first time in the Mark Few era, spanning a quarter century, this Gonzaga team will not have a single player average more than 30 points per game. 30 points per game. That would be not that bold. 30 minutes per game. Every single year that Mark Few has been the head coach of the Gonzaga Bulldogs, at least one player has averaged 30 or more minutes per game. But due to a confluence of unique factors, I believe there's a real chance that this team does not have a single player who tops that 30-minute per game mark. I also think this is potentially a very good thing. I think that you look at some of the best Gonzaga teams, and I pulled data on the last 10 years. The last 10 years, Gonzaga has, again, for the last 25 years, Gonzaga has had at least one player average more than 30 minutes per game. But recently, last year was only one, and that was Ryan Nembhard. Granted, Nolan Hickman was at 29.7. But for a lot of Gonzaga's best teams, they haven't had that many players doing this. Again, a good example would be the 2016-17 team, which went to the national championship before that loss to North Carolina. That was considered one of Gonzaga's deepest teams of all time. They only had one player who was over 30 minutes per game, and that was point guard Nigel Williams-Goss. Secondary point guard Josh Perkins was at 29.1 minutes, so he was quite close, but did not quite top that mark. Gonzaga's team in the 2020-21 season, of course, Gonzaga's other national championship appearance, they did have two. That was Corey Kispert and Joel Ayayi, and granted, Andrew Nembhard was at 29.9, so very, very close to having three. So I wouldn't say it's definitively a great thing for Gonzaga if this comes true, but it feels very likely based on the roster construction for this team. For starters, the easiest place to look, most of the time, when Gonzaga has had a player over 30 minutes per game, it has been their point guard. Mark Few loves to ride their point guards heavily. He has always been somebody who pushes the point guards to play 32, 35 minutes per game. We saw that with Ryan Nembhard during his tenure. We saw that with Andrew Nembhard. We saw that with Kevin Pangos. We saw that with Josh Perkins. We saw that with Derek Radio. Just go look on Basketball Reference. Look at the single season leaders for minutes per game in a Gonzaga uniform, and it's basically Adam Morrison and a bunch of point guards. And if you look at career, the most minutes played in a Gonzaga uniform, I believe Kevin Pangos and Josh Perkins are tied for the most minutes played. Like, it is always guard dependent. But because Braden Smith has yet to play in this system, and Smith was over 30 minutes per game both of his seasons at Colgate, so it's not like it's crazy to imagine him playing 30 minutes per game. If somebody on this team does it, I almost guarantee you that it'll be Braden Smith. But because Smith has not played in this system, we haven't seen how seamlessly he's going to adjust to that role. Ideally, it's great, and it goes smoothly, and he's, not exactly Ryan Nembhard, but able to do a lot of the same things. But we also know, because Mark Few said this to John Rothstein a few weeks ago on a podcast appearance, that Mario St-Superi is pushing Braden Smith for playing time. This is also potentially coach speak. And the glimpses we've seen of Mario at this time through the exhibition games showcase a player who's maybe not ready for a significant role, at least not on the ball. But there's plenty of reason to believe that Mario is going to play a big role for this team this year. Is it enough that Smith ends up averaging 28 minutes instead of 30? Hard to say. I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Few is looking intensely at potentially having his rotations be a little bit deeper because of how fatigued we have seen these Gonzaga teams get. They run out of gas towards the end of the year, and they rode Ryan Nembhard really hard, especially in his first year. And I think we might be seeing this team be willing to scale back. This roster also has the depth to be able to play 8 deep, well, not even 9 deep. They go 10 deep. They go 10 deep on this team pretty easily. In fact, if they don't go 10 deep, if they are only going 9 deep, which is pretty standard for Mark Few, frankly, 8 is standard. But if they're going 9 deep, somebody's not in the rotation. And by somebody, I mean it's either Davis Vogel, or it is Steele Venters, or it is Jalen Worley, or it is Tyon Grant-Foster. Like, who is not in the rotation? Adam Miller, like Mario, maybe. Like, somebody's not in the rotation if they only go 9 deep. If they go 10 deep, it stands to reason that you wouldn't have multiple guys or even anybody playing more than 30 minutes per game. I think that feels doable on this roster. Graham Ike and Braden Huff are the 2 best players on this team, and that is not debatable, but neither of them have played anywhere close to 30 minutes per game. And again, I'm not saying they won't have games where they play 30. Obviously, they will. They will have multiple games where they play 30 minutes per game, 30 minutes in that game. So will Smith. So will probably Grant-Foster and Venters and Miller and all those guys. But to average 30 for Graham and Braden would mean very few games where they get in foul trouble. Very few, because again, you pick up 2 fouls in the first 7 minutes of a game, you're benched for the rest of the half. If you pick up 2 fouls in the first 7 minutes of a game, and Mark Few historically will bench you for the next 13 minutes, even if you play the entire rest of the second half, that's not 30 minutes. Not 30 minutes. And again, you may average 30 minutes over, a couple of weeks or so, but to do it for a full season, I just don't see that happening. Again, I think Graham Ike was 23 minutes per game last year. Braden Huff was 17. Like, that's a huge jump for either of those guys to average 30. And I don't see it happening. Smith is the most likely candidate. I would have said Adam Miller is a very likely candidate, but seeing him benched for Emmanuel Inocente, it may not mean anything in that exhibition game, but it probably means something. The amount of depth on the wing. And then again, I think Tyon Grant-Foster is the kind of person who could have played 30 minutes a game had his first initial request for a eligibility waiver back in June been granted, and he'd spent this entire summer working out with the team, learning the offense, getting his familiarity with kind of what he's asked to do under wraps, but that didn't happen. And now he's likely going to be eased into action, which impacts multiple people. Maybe Adam Miller plays 30 minutes a game for a few weeks, but then when Tyon Grant-Foster gets back, you slide Inocente down to the 2, or you slide Venters down to the 2, and suddenly Miller's playing more like 20 minutes per game. Maybe Grant-Foster's playing 30 minutes a game by February, but he's not going to play 30 minutes on Monday. I would be stunned if that happened. So there's just enough different factors with this team, with the Grant-Foster situation, with the new point guard situation, with a talented backup point guard who's going to develop as the year goes on, with bigs who haven't historically played nearly 30 minutes per game. All of that leads to a situation where who would it be? Smith is the most obvious candidate. If you don't think it's Ike and Huff, if you don't think it's Smith, there's nobody else who's going to do it. Venters coming off 2 years of injury, averaging 30 minutes a game, it's not going to happen. Tyon Grant-Foster getting slowly acclimated along, probably not going to happen. Miller, again, I don't really see it, not with the way Inocente's been playing, not with the way Steele Venters been playing, not with Grant-Foster getting healthy, not with Davis Vogel pushing for playing time out on the wing as well. I think it ends up being something like this. Smith plays 28 minutes a game. Ike and Huff each play over 25 minutes per game. Miller plays 25 minutes a game, and then a whole bunch of dudes are between 20 and 25 minutes. Inocente, Venters, Grant-Foster, maybe Mario, all of those guys are in like that 18 to 25 minute range. Diani's playing 15 minutes a game, something like that. And you just end up in a situation where you have so much depth and so much mixing and matching that you can do with your lineups and your rotations that you don't end up having anybody just constantly on the floor what feels like every minute of every game. Again, I don't think this is a bad thing whatsoever, but it is a unique thing. And as I started doing research for this question, my plan was like, the first time in 10 years that Gonzaga hasn't played somebody 30 minutes a game. And then I kept looking and I realized this has never happened. This has never happened. So certainly this would be it has to be a bold prediction if we're talking about Mark Few doing something he's literally never done in his career, but it also feels very kind of logical based on the way that this roster is constructed and kind of the situation that has unfolded this offseason. Kind of paints a picture of a team that is going to be a little bit more egalitarian with the minutes and potentially making life more difficult for opposing teams trying to game plan against them. Well, we got one more spooky bold prediction to close out the show, the week and the month of October and the off season. This one's involving the free throw line for Mark Few's team. More on that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, it's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving you more each time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. We're talking Davis Fogel for Gonzaga. He delivered in a big way on Monday against Western Oregon. 13 points, perfect 9 of 9 from the free throw line, and we are going to talk about that to close out the show. Great performance, once again continuing to make a case that he should be a regular part of Gonzaga's rotation this year. Just like Fogel delivered for the Zags, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. Folks, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or you just want to ride out the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Gonzaga still plus 3,500 to win that 2026 national championship. Graham Ike just made some award watch lists. He's at plus 5,000 to win the Wooden Award if you feel like that is his destiny this year. And right now, it's a perfect time to bet because FanDuel's got giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, number 3, my final bold prediction for the upcoming Gonzaga basketball season. Again, as we are doing the bold predictions for the final episode before we get into the season officially next Monday, Gonzaga's first game against Texas Southern. We talked about Braden Huff potentially outscoring Graham Ike this year. Second segment, we talked about the potential for Gonzaga to not have a single player average more than 30 minutes per game. And here in the final segment, we're talking free throw shooting. And this is a pretty simple prediction. Gonzaga is going to lead the country in free throw rate. That's it. That's your bold prediction right there. And again, feels bold, sounds bold. For fans who are exasperated by missed free throws, it definitely sounds insane. But this team was 4th last year. It was not crazy to imagine that they finish around there. And they've been top 27 times in Mark Few's 25 years as the head coach for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. 4th is the second highest they have ever finished. They were at 80.4% as a team last year. Back in 2006, that was, of course, Adam Morrison's triumphant final season in Spokane. They were 3rd that year. They've also finished 12th, 13th, 15th, and 19th twice. So they've been in that top 20 conversation. It's not crazy to think that they'll be back in that conversation again. Obviously, this roster lost their best free throw shooter from last year by percentage, and that was Caleb Battle. It was over 93%, one of the best free throw shooters literally in the history of college basketball. Him being out the door is a big loss for this team from a free throw perspective. They also lose Ben Gregg, who is a very good free throw shooter. They also lose Ryan Nembhard, who was an okay free throw shooter. They lose Michael Ajayi, who was a below average free throw shooter. They lose Nolan Hickman, who just took almost no free throws last year, so really doesn't impact the team from a free throw perspective very much. I also would like to acknowledge very quickly, I mentioned Adam Morrison. He was a big part of it. Really should probably mention Derek Rivio there as well for being one of the best free throw shooters literally in the history of professional and college basketball. This definitely deserves some love for that as well. But looking at this Gonzaga roster, they returned Graham Ike. Graham Ike shot 80.5% last year from the free throw line. He led the team significantly with 169 attempts. More than Caleb Battle by a lot. By a lot. In fact, Braden Huff was 3rd on this team in free throw attempts. Braden Huff took 47 free throws last year. Graham Ike, once again, for reference, 169. So when you're looking at percentages and you see players who have bad percentages and you think, well, it's going to be lowered because so-and-so is not very good. Doesn't matter if so-and-so is going to take 20 free throws this year and Graham Ike is going to take 200 of them. like that. The statistics are not going to be impacted anywhere close to the same way. And Graham Ike is back, and Graham Ike is going to take 175, 200 free throws this year. And if he shoots 80%, that is going to have a monumental impact on this team being right around that 80% mark again this year. Braden Huff was just over 70%. But as a freshman, his first year, he was like 55. I'm not expecting another 15 percentage point jump from Huff, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's at 75, maybe even 77, something like that. And I think, again, we talked about this in the first segment, a big point of development for Braden Huff this year is shooting more free throws. If Braden Huff can shoot 73%, but take twice as many free throws, be in the 90s, maybe even approach 100 free throw attempts on the season, make 73, 75 of them, something like that, that is a nice boost for Gonzaga as well. Smiley Diani returns. He was 83% last year. That's 10 of 12. But in a much bigger role, Diani as a really, really big player around the rim, he's probably going to get fouled a lot. I don't know that I project him to shoot 83%. That's pretty rare for a player his size. But if he's getting fouled a fair amount this year and he's over 70, that's going to help Gonzaga a lot as well. Since we're talking returners, Emmanuel Nicente is back. He shot 50%. If that alarms or scares you, just know that he was 2 of 4. Doesn't even move the needle whatsoever for Gonzaga. He's obviously going to take more this year, but not much of a needle mover in that space. For the newcomers, you have 3 players over 79% in their career. Steele Venters, 85% for his career on 2.5 attempts per game. Braden Smith, 81% on over 3 attempts per game in his career. Adam Miller, 79% on 2 attempts per game in his career. Those 3 guys are all great historical free throw shooters who should have big enough roles this year that they are positively impacting Gonzaga's free throw shooting this season. Now, perhaps the biggest hinge for this coming true is Tyon Grant-Foster. Tyon Grant-Foster is replacing Caliph Battle. At least that's the projected role for Grant-Foster again. Whether he's playing that role on day one or not remains to be seen. I suspect he'll get kind of slowly acclimated into this system throughout the year. But if Tyon Grant-Foster has, for his career, averaged 6 free throw attempts per game. In his 2 years at Grand Canyon, he was over 7 attempts per game. I don't expect him to necessarily be right at that level because, again, Caliph Battle was over 8 free throw attempts per game before he got to Gonzaga, and that number was like cut in half. He was like 3.5 free throw attempts per game. I expect Grant-Foster to be more like 4 free throw attempts per game. But that could be enough for him to be second on this team in total attempts behind Graham Ike, even if he gets kind of slowly acclimated into the system. Grant-Foster's a career 71.5% free throw shooter. He was like 68% last year at Grand Canyon. If he is not improved as a free throw shooter, that might be enough to keep Gonzaga from being the best free throw shooting team in the country, or even keep them out of the top 5. If Grant-Foster takes 5 free throw attempts per game and makes them less than 73% of the time, Gonzaga's not going to be they're not going to lead the country. It's just not going to happen. I don't think that would be this catastrophic thing for Gonzaga necessarily. I mean, if Grant-Foster's getting to the line a bunch and he's shooting 73%, you'd like that to be better, but it's not horrible. It's not like, again, it's not catastrophic or anything like that, but it's certainly enough to prevent Gonzaga from doing what I'm predicting here, which is leading the country in free throws. Also worth noting that Jalen Warley has never been a very good free throw shooter, under 70% for his career. I think because of his role, I don't know that he'll be getting the line a ton, but he's probably not going to be a positive contributor for Gonzaga in that spot. And I mentioned Davis Vogel, because Davis Vogel went 9 of 9 at the free throw line in that exhibition game against Western Oregon. I still am hesitant to project a particularly big role for Davis Vogel, especially with Grant-Foster being eligible, but he has played like somebody who very clearly deserves to play for this team, and Mark Few tends to reward those guys. So Davis Vogel is somebody who, if he's in the rotation or even if he's outside the rotation, if he plays 5 minutes a game, even in garbage time, what I have already can tell you convincingly about Davis Vogel, having watched these last couple exhibition games, is in those 5 minutes, every time he touches the basketball, he's going to try to get fouled, or he's going to try to dunk on somebody. And if he gets fouled in the process, great. But he is a menace in terms of attacking the rim with relentless pressure and is going to get to the free throw line, especially if he's playing 5 minutes of garbage time against the opposing teams, a likely bad opposing team and their backups. Davis Vogel is going to be getting to the stripe a bunch. And if he's making them, 80+% of the time, which feels possible for him, that's going to help contribute to Gonzaga in a way as well. The wild cards would be Mario St. Superi. just haven't really seen it. Was a good free throw shooter professionally overseas, but I don't know how much he's going to get to the line, how much that role is going to be there for him. But he definitely is probably the most notable wild card, just in terms of a player who's going to have a role on this team, but who hasn't played college basketball before. So we don't have a lot of data points on how often he's going to get to the line and what that's going to look like. This is a bold prediction for a reason, obviously, but you can see how this happens. Graham Ike continues to be elite at the line. Braden Huff takes a tick up in terms of his percentage and his volume of attempts. Grant-Foster has a good year at the free throw line. And again, guys like Venter, Smith, and Miller, who've already done it at a really high clip throughout their career, all of this coalesces in Gonzaga being one of the best, if not the best, free throw shooting team in the country. I got to shout out the Wisconsin Badgers because they were the leader last year, and they are very, very good at shooting free throws and getting to the line. They lost their best free throw shooter in John Tanji, but they're going to be a tough team to compete with in this category. There's also, 361 other teams to compete with as well. But keep this in mind for Gonzaga. This could be one of their best free throw shooting teams of all time, and very possibly in the conversation as the best free throw shooting team in the country. It's going to wrap it up for me again today, this week, this month, and this offseason here on the Locked On Zags podcast. When we're back together again on Monday, we will be previewing Texas Southern, Gonzaga's first official game of the 25-26 season. I cannot wait, but folks, I want you to have a fantastic, healthy, fun, and safe holiday weekend. Get yourselves ready for college basketball to be back for you all early next week. Thanks again for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.